This is Angela Cresson talking about the value of the Statistical Analysis Plan for medical and scientific research. At the end of this talk, you should be able to answer the question, what is a Statistical Analysis Plan, how does it improve research quality, and distinguish between pre-specified and post-hoc analyses. In 2012, there was a GEM article that talked about the value of statistical analysis plans in observational research. Statistical analysis plans have actually been used for quite some time in randomized clinical trials, but these studies are typically held to a higher level of rigor as there is some concern, given that they are experimental studies, for patient safety. But these authors argue that they're important for observational research as well. So the Statistical Analysis Plan helps prevent false positive findings by focusing statistical testing to important research questions. It facilitates communication between the statisticians and the clinical investigators, and it enables reproducibility so that other statisticians could pick up the plan and reproduce the analysis. On the SDBC, Study Design Biostatistics Center website, we have this overview of the research process, and this is actually a helpful resource for the research process in general and also statistical analysis plans. The statistical analysis plan is developed after you perform the literature review and after you've met with the statistician, and generally the statistician takes the lead on writing the statistical analysis plan. Although it can be a collaborative process because mock-up tables and figures are really a helpful component of the statistical analysis plan, and I'll talk about that more in a bit. Another point I want to make here is that the statistical analysis plan should come before the data collection and analysis, or at least prior to the analysis of the data at minimum, because it's a tool to kind of plan your analysis, so it should not be conducted after you have done the analysis. Okay. So what is a statistical analysis plan? It's a document that translates your research objectives into testable hypotheses. It outlines key pre-specified analyses. Again, pre-specified means analyses that were planned in advance of analyzing the data. And it includes details of the statistical analyses used to meet the research objectives. There is no standard template for the statistical analysis plan. However, at our center, we typically write plans that consist of the following components. There's an introduction, which gives kind of an overview of the project from the statistician's perspective. I find this to be helpful just to make sure that I have recapitulated accurately what the investigator voiced as their research goals. There's an investigator's description from the PI that typically is just pulled from the project request form that they've submitted. And then there's a project endpoint section. Is the purpose of these analyses for an abstract or a paper or presentation? Also, are there any deadlines that are associated with this project? Next, we have a description of the data. This section should include the name of the data file used for the analysis and its location on a computer server, any inclusion-exclusion criteria, main outcomes and exposure variables, and potentially any derived variables as well. Next, we have the research objectives, followed by the planned analyses to meet those research objectives, including mock-up tables and figures. And then finally, we might have a quality control section describing methods for how to check important results and the double programmer for the project if it's applicable. Okay, so it's probably helpful to go through an example of a statistical analysis plan. This is taken from a project that I published with the orthopedics group here at the University of Utah, although I have modified it slightly for this talk. The main research objective here was whether patient characteristics were associated with the medical care that the patient received. satisfaction with the medical care that the patient received. And the analysis focused on comparing patient characteristics to satisfaction, where satisfaction was dichotomized as perfect versus less than perfect, using univariable logistic regression. And then this analysis was repeated, adjusting for age and sex. And finally, we reported odds ratios and 95% confidence intervals and p-values from the regression models. So mock-up tables are really a helpful tool for facilitating communication between the investigator and the statistician. It kind of gives the investigator a clear idea of what the statistician will provide for them, and the statistician has a good understanding of what they need to provide. So I find that that's really effective for kind of communicating the project goals. This is an example of a Table 1, a patient demographics and visit information table. And in this table, you'll see we have age, sex, insurance, employment status, subspecialty, and geographic location. This is the mock-up for the analysis table that was created for this project. Here we have in the first column unadjusted odds ratio results comparing each variable by itself to satisfaction. And then in this column we have the adjusted odds ratio results, where we are comparing each of these variables adjusted for age and sex with the satisfaction outcome. Age is just adjusted for sex, and sex is just adjusted for age, but insurance and the others are adjusted for both variables. The p-value that we choose to report here is from the adjusted model, because we know that at least age is an important predictor of satisfaction, and so we're interested in the comparison of these other variables, insurance status and employment status, adjusting for both age and sex in the analysis. And that was considered our primary analysis. You might find mock-up figures through your literature review. That might give you ideas of ways you could present the data, and you might just copy and paste in a figure from one of the articles that you have covered, and that's what we did here. And we have notes to say that the y-axis should be the predicted probability of satisfaction, and then the x-axis should be patient age, and the stratification variable should be subspecialty. So we talked in the beginning a little bit about how the statistical analysis plan lists pre-specified analyses, but inevitably after the analysis has been done, there will be some follow-up questions. The results might kind of spur new questions, or there might be some unexpected findings, so you want to do some follow-up analyses to kind of probe those findings further. These analyses are now called post hoc analyses, and it's important to differentiate them from the pre-specified analyses, as they tend to kind of have less value or importance to the reader than the pre-specified analyses. In fact, sometimes there can even be sort of a derogatory term, data dredging, just because of the fact that the more tests that are conducted, the more likely a result will be found by chance. However, there's just naturally going to be some follow-up questions asked after seeing the initial results. So in a lot of cases, I don't think they are viewed entirely negatively. But it is important to document these post hoc analyses in the statistical analysis plan via the addendum section. I usually do this kind of at the end of the plan. I have a new section called addendums. And it's very important in your paper to differentiate between pre-specified and post hoc analyses when reporting your results. In summary, the statistical analysis plans are a helpful tool for communicating the analysis needs and expectations. They should be developed prior to conducting the statistical analysis, and they serve to focus the research questions and encourage hypothesis-driven research. Analyses proposed after seeing the results from the statistical analysis plan should be reported as post hoc or exploratory. For additional resources, you might check out the GEM article that I mentioned at the beginning, and also the SDBC website has a section on statistical analysis plans. Thank you.